Hello.
Hey, my man. I guess it's already recording. I wasn't really intending to have it recording until it's 4.
Well, in that case, I'll be careful what I say.
I I got later on I got to tell you about the Jamie story. Good to see you, man.
I made it home just in enough time to get a
Huh?
snack and get cleaned up. I was at the dog bar, a little place where everybody takes their dogs to run around loose and play.
Oh yeah, we have one here in Fairhaven. Yeah.
It's a different scene every time. It's a totally different story every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The dogs get along better than the humans.
It is great to see them getting together, isn't it?
It's like a giant playground, and they all find a way to get along.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they get along so well, but unlike a human playground where there's children, there, children get in fights, but the dogs don't do that. They just sniff each other's butts and they're fine. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
But, so
Well,
anyway, I got me a glass of wine and I'm ready to go.
I just sent a message out that it would be good if you had a copy of that email I sent out yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because there are points on there that would be accessible to you right away, you know. If
Well,
you
I've
re
got I've got the email. All I got to do is I won't bring it up on my computer. I'll bring it up on my phone since
Okay,
I've got you on the computer. I don't want to bring it up there.
sure.
Or I could put you on the phone and then
I
bring it up.
should have I should have mentioned it a couple hours ago, and then I got the Jamie thing showed up, and then that became an issue for me. Um, but if you remember kind of what I was saying in it, then I think you're fine.
Let's see.
Because that was kind of intended to be some of the talking points for today.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're talking about today's session that you sent out a couple hours ago.
It starts out, "Hi again, fine fellows. I've a lot of thoughts to share with you all before the handful and so on."
Yeah, it's a long one. It's a couple
Yeah,
pages.
I've got it printed out.
Yeah,
I should have told you to do that, but um,
get the dog out if you close the door because I'm talking to my sister. The dog needs to be able to get out if I'm in here. Okay, now we got rid of my dog, so close the door. They can't hear me talking in the living room. I had the door open because the dog could go in and out.
hmm
I didn't want the dog trapped in here if it had to go pee. But you know, it,
right.
it's a civilized dog. It would hold it for a while.
Well, that's why, that yesterday email was meant to be um the kind of spark for the fire.
Right.
And then there's Carlos, and that's where um at 4 o'clock in 24 minutes, um, I want to start this out with the most formal of the recordings that we've done, um, as and it'll tie in, of course, with current events. So Jamie's point was, well, I didn't even know he was back from China for crying out loud, but then he's going, well, I don't think I'll come today because I'm not into politics.
Well,
I go, you lunkhead, this is a lot more than this is what I told him. I said, this is a lot more, this has got a lot more than politics for crying out loud. And if and you don't even know what the hell is going on, and he's already deciding, and on one hand, it'd be better to have him not here, but at the same time, he's supposed to be a part of this group. And this is about philosophical evolution after all. Um, it's interesting, because he became a teacher, after years of being kind of a outside character in a way, and then he would tell me all about his recalcitrant students, on the Big Island, and uh, and then and he just behaves like that now, um, looking like he's in bed when the text is going on. So I think that maybe the reason that we don't have Frank yet or Tim Burgess, because they're going to be here. I'm not sure about Tim Finnegan. I don't expect him, but at the same time, he may have said he was coming. I just lost remember my sense of that. Um, but I know it's just going to be a handful of us. But at the same time, I'm inspired to, uh, given the state of the country and the world right now, and how it fits in with. In fact, I'm planning on in 2 weeks from now not going into Emerson yet because we'll have everybody back then, and so I want this to be the kind of spark for them. And Nora has gone to the trouble for me to make sure we're on recording so that they can watch this and see uh, what kind of ground we break, uh, looking at um, evolution, as I pointed out in yesterday's email, where we um, look at it as the moral human. I mean, this is what really Darwin had his finger on, but lost track of it in all kinds of ways, being so early in the game. And like I said in this thing, I looked up yesterday, is evolution still underway? And I get all these things about it, but not having anything to do with the moral purpose of our evolutionary history. And it's all it got to do with correcting little, you could say, physical qualities and so on. It's like and especially because we want to be looking at the blocks to this evolutionary process that is underway, and it's the essence of our purpose in the world. And um, nobody's really talking about it except us, except maybe churches.
well, that's right, because what mostly, I mean, there's there's individual morality, and then there's which is often talked about in church, but
Hmm.
in in terms of group morality, that
Hmm.
usually um, it can be expressed in church, and church can talk about that, but it's usually something that's kind of more in civics and
Right.
the the it's like Aristotle's um, his economics is based in, he says it's part of moral philosophy. So
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
economics expresses what's worth, what you value spending your money on as a group.
Sure.
And so of course it's a moral, they're moral choices, or at least choices of value, that we have, and some of them can be matter of taste, but the ones that are matter of function definitely are matter of value that can be considered moral and part of moral philosophy, and so I think that um, this is very important, and but then again, with all this other stuff popping up in the media, that truly is politics, and that's what political stuff is about, is assigning values to things, and values that not and values that the whole group may not agree with, but they have to abide by to a certain extent, or they're breaking the law sometimes. So I can,
Yeah,
yeah, I can
yeah.
abide by, the city council. They'll spend money on things that I don't like, but I still pay my taxes. Um, and that we can talk about that kind of stuff when we talk about Emerson, because that would lead you to civil disobedience that his disciple Thoreau came up with very eloquently.
Sure, sure,
So,
sure.
that's a whole nother area. But for right now, um, um, what we're seeing, and it's interesting, um, for me especially because I have jury duty, and
Oh,
it's
I know you're on it now. Did you
I'm
actually you got selected, huh?
next. I'm selected, and I am the alternate foreman, and it's
The
not
foreman, you're the foreman.
alternate. If the teacher, if the lady drops out that I happen to know
Ah,
through
there he is.
the mail,
Okay.
so anyway, it's a whole nother thing, and
There he is.
the fact is it's a special grand jury, and special grand juries only deal with organized
Oh,
crime.
it's a grand jury. So it's just you're just at then what do you call it? Not inducting, but
I indict.
indicting, right?
I can indict the mayor or the governor, or it's a county grand jury, so it's not a federal grand jury, so it's under state laws and not federal laws, and they
Hmm.
vary from state to state.
I'm a good Texas laws.
Oh, I can subpoena people, and for very little reason, I can drag them into court if I want to, if I can show just cause to relate it to the thing. And I'm on a special. They call it a special grand jury because it generally deals with only things like political corruption, excessive
Uh,
use of force by police officers,
okay,
and
Mitch,
other.
I'm going to interrupt you here because I don't. This is not our main topic today.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and I'm looking forward to hearing from it on the phone at least. So so you passed that thing on to Jamie, right, Frank?
Yeah, I forwarded the email to him, and then I mean by text. I texted it to him.
Yeah, I didn't
That's
hear
what I'm
from him
supposed
until
to
about
do.
20 minutes ago, and I didn't even know he was back from China, and
Oh,
he's telling me, well, I don't think I really want to come today because I'm not into politics, and and I'm texting him back. This is not about politics, you lunkhead. Uh, and if you just if you just talk to me about it, you could have a sense of what it is. Of course, you'll just. I said, but that would mean you coming not showing up to look like you're in bed. So I just as soon not have him because I want this thing, and this is the important of the message I sent today is that this is something I want to pass on this meeting as it begins in 15 minutes or so. It's being recorded already, but that could get cut, I guess. But the way I see it is that I really want, of course, people to see this message, especially the stuff I sent yesterday in the email yesterday being like kind of the spark of it, but also the phone call that I got back about 9 o'clock from Carlos uh, approaching the border. I'm not sure. He's in Mazatlan now, so he's not sure when he's going to get back in the country. And we talked for about 45 minutes. Um, and I'm going to use that as the spark for what I'm going to say in about 20 minutes. Um, so I'm going to have a kind of a talk I'm going to give to begin today, um, and um, and use uh, some of my history with Carlos. Of course, there I am. Of course, thinking about here he is with his. Well, I should wait for Mitch, but I don't know when he'll be back. Um, and and we're waiting for Tim Burgess too. Um, and I don't know about Jamie. As far as I'm concerned, it's okay if he isn't here. If he because we are talking about politics after all. I mean, holy goodness! I mean, what we're seeing is the blockage of evolution politically, of course. So that's certainly a major factor in this whole terrible situation that we're dealing with in this world right now and in our country most specifically. But otherwise, it's way beyond that. I mean, this is, um, we've talked about now, I know over the months, um, blockages in evolution, especially when they take place to interrupt an evolutionary process of some kind that's or progress of some kind that is bringing hope and happiness, I guess you could say, uh, to people, and we're really seeing it now. And so, as I think about Carlos, and there he is he has this big Mercedes vehicle that you've all seen, I'm sure, and he and Betts travels it with their two Mastiff dogs. But now he's not only got the two Mastiff, when they come up here, I got the two Mastiff dogs in there. But it's not just the dogs, it's also young Carlos. Mitch and I know Carlos very well. Carlitos, we've always thought of him as. He's now about over 30 years old. When I was first staying with him in 1985, he was just like 3 or so. And um, and when you got your probably just about my dearest brother to be approaching the border
Yeah,
with a family of Mexicans.
yeah.
Um, and you're right now, even my heart is thumping as I think about it. And so uh, Carlos is going to be the topic of the first period. I figure that's why I said in this message that I want you to all be ready to stay for 2 hours,
Oh,
um,
sure.
because I'm going to take about the first half hour and then throw it open to all of us again, um, including the email I sent yesterday and the themes that I threw out at you then. And I should have told you to make a copy of it. I've got a copy right here so that I can look at the talking points. Um, but we've been playing with this term now for a few months, having to do with the blockades, the blockages, the interruptions, the what have you of evolution. And I think, of course, the primary one, the one throughout history is the amity-enmity complex. I mean, I think that Sir Arthur Keith uh, put his finger on it so uh, perfectly, and how many forms it takes. Um, but nonetheless, there are other ways of looking at this, and we see them all. We see them all unfolding right now. I'm concerned about Tim Burgess not being here yet, um, because I know he's tight in with us, and not sure. It could be a time thing with him. He's on the East Coast. He may have lost the idea of the correct time. It's hard to say in that regard. But the message I sent yesterday, of course, didn't have Carlos in my mind at the moment. It had much more to do with um, the talking points that I've got here, and basically it's these blockages to evolution. You know, when I stopped writing my column called Dancing on the Brink, when the two publications that I wrote it for failed, uh, then I wrote this column, which I think you've seen, but it's available online. I only had 8 columns. It was online, so it's there. It's called Dance. It's called uh, Sacred Democracy. And I wasn't thinking in evolutionary terms then. I haven't really until the last couple of years, really. And um, and then I started doing it a lot with conversations with Frank. But um, the point I was trying to make in that column, those 8,000 word columns before the editor moved on to The Nation magazine as an intern. He was just a recent graduate from Western Washington University, a brilliant young man, had this website called Read the Dirt, and those columns are there. Just look up me or look up Sacred Democracy or what have you. And for me, the whole thing it came to love. I mean, when I got on this Living Democracy group and we were doing all this political work about stopping corporations from coming into the community, and I'm sitting there saying, I think it's got a lot more to do with love here than we're talking about living democracy, my goodness sake. And just stopping a corporation from doing this or that is a tactic, and it has some value, but at the same time, it's got to be love. And so then when we were done, and I didn't have a Dancing on the Brink column to do, and so I started writing these pieces called Sacred Democracy, and it had all to do with love. And it had to do with the idea that you have to have love with all of your fellow members of the democracy for it to work. If you're in a block of voters, or if you're in uh, if you have your own little bailiwick that you're um, all about, then you're just going to care about the successes of them, and the others aren't really going to matter. And we see this as well, and it's a perfect target for the amity complex because it's not you, it's them, and you're a deal. And this is where we've got the king of the amity enemy thing with Donald Trump as the president, and we saw it when he ran his campaign, and we could contrast it with uh, Kamala Harris because she was trying in her own way, not quite the way we are looking at it, but to unite everyone, to have everyone be thinking in oneness, everyone to be not to be looking at, enemies like Trump is saying. Not only does he have enemies, he hates them. And these are members of his own culture and so on. And I mean, this guy is off the wheels now. And so, but you could see it between the two of them. And that's how he manipulated his voters and so on to put them on the amity seesaw. But what I want to really get into today at the beginning, and I'm going to wait a few more minutes and see maybe Tim Burgess, I'm sure you must have gotten something that I sent because I sent several things today in kind of my scramble. Um, that um, it's really got to do with um, this story that I really want to focus on having to do with Carlos. Um, and and a tremendous event that took place with us in 1985. But I want to, I'm trying, I'm on this campaign now for myself, uh, and Ann can tell you about it, where I don't want to say I don't want to say gonna anymore. I'm really trying to make it a New Year's resolution. I want to be saying going to. And it's like, um, you got gonna is like the worst one among the worst. Ah, there he is among the worst trashy things that we have is this gonna term. It's now it's easy to say it. I mean, I have no um, dispute about that. Hello there, Tim number three. Uh, uh, Meet Tim number one over there. And from Australia for the moment. He's by way of British Columbia. And I've told you all about him. So um, everybody knows about Tim Finnegan. And the Tim Finnegan, I should say here. And so I think we've got our quorum because I don't think we'll be seeing James, and I think it's probably just as well that we don't. Um, so we're only 2 minutes from 4 o'clock, and so um, I'm going to start out uh, doing a kind of monologue here for about a half hour, a historical one, and then you all know. I mean, I sent out this email yesterday, so you know the spirit of where we're talking, um, and you'll see how this historical event that I'm going to share with you and the watchers, the future watchers of this recording, because we're on recording and we have been since 3:30, but it's been informal and we can certainly cut it because I think that it's more important to start out with something like welcome to philosophical evolution. But I'm not going to say that yet because it's only 3:59. And believe me, I like the informal way we do things. And it's not like I've been yearning to do this. Um, and I would be thinking of it right now. I would be thinking of this as just setting us up for 2 weeks from now when we've got the whole contingent. And we're not going to be using Dart. We're not going to be looking at Emerson yet, because this is really the current event that we're really dealing with right now, and how evolution now, the stages of it right now, matters more than the beauty of learning the stages of coming into love with nature. Uh, and we're all loving it, and I'm looking forward to when we deal with it. But I think right now, we've already talked about it over the last few times, the blockages and so on, and of evolution and so on. And these are really much more, you might say, critical at the moment. So, welcome to philosophical evolution. And as I've said before, I'm going to start this with a discussion or the story of my friendship with Carlos Hidalgo and an event that took place with him in 1985. Carlos and I have been friends since 1980, very, very close. I've stayed many times with him in Mexico, as Mitch has been a few as well. Mitch and I have traveled to Mexico on numerous occasions and stayed with Carlos in Cozumel and stayed with him in Pátzcuaro. No, not Pátzcuaro. We stayed there for the Day of the Dead. This was not Quetzalcoatl either. Um, I forget the name of that town now. Remember the name of that town, Mitch? Um, anyway, he's not talking. So, in 1985,
Muted.
I was staying in Mexico City um, for several months in the spring of 1985 with my dear friend Carlos Hidalgo. At the time, he was a junior professor type at the University of New Mexico, the UNAM campus. He was on the northern campus of the city of Mexico City, teaching sociology. And much of the time there, I was just keeping a journal. Um, I was going to watch baseball games uh, about a mile and a half across Mexico City from his house. And I would go to watch the either the Diablos Rojos or that was the red. They were the red or the other blue team. Yeah, because they call the Yankees Yanqui or something like that. And then I would walk home about 10:30 at night, about a mile and a half across Mexico City. Um, and I took Carlos one time to see one of those games. He'd never seen a baseball game before. Carlos is a big soccer guy, and um, and he was totally disgusted by it. He looked like a bunch of fat guys all standing around waiting for somebody to hit the ball to them. It didn't really look like sport to him hardly at all. But I was in love with it there and had a wonderful time going to these games. The whole stadium was in blue and red. So right up the back where I would be in the grandstand, right down the middle of it was where the blue became red, all the way around either side. And so, and I was staying on the roof of their house in in a certain area in Mexico City, and in a maid's quarters. There was no maid, um, and sleeping on a foam pad, and had a wonderful place there. And after I'd been there for a couple of months, Carlos taught, and I would go to Carlos's classes with him sometimes, and I would address them. And he and I got very used to it, and we did it in Cozumel too, when he was running a community college, and I would talk to his students and English, and then he would translate them into Spanish, and then they would ask questions to me, and he would translate them back to me. We got very good at it, um, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And he and Ennio, I don't know if you ever met Ennio. Uh, he was a sociologist from Toluca University Extension up in Toluca to the west of Mexico City. And they decided, and there was going to be this big event um, that was being put on by them and others in Mexico City um, for like 3 days. And it had to do with communication. Um, the larger topic was communication and so on, variations of it, which I wasn't really involved with, except that they asked me to make a presentation of my own. And this presentation of mine was going to be the last one before the very final event, the very last day of when this kind of major figure, political figure, was going to close it up. And that was me, the last person before him. And so there I am up on the Azotera, the area up there, the maid's quarters, trying to decide what I was going to do and what was in my mind at the time, what was in my heart at the time, what was in my consciousness at the time, and it was of course a new age view, and I knew it had to do with communication that they were doing and variations of it. There were lots of technical things and so on, and so I decided it was going to be communication in the new age, and I was full of the evolution of what was going on then. I wasn't really thinking about it that much in terminology, but this was my subject. And so then what I had to do was decide how we were going to approach it. So I told Carlos, what I'll do it in English, and then we'll translate it into Spanish, but I will read it in Spanish. I'm very good at that, you know, and I was able to pronounce correctly and so on. And so, and then there would be cause and answer, you know, questions and answers, and we could do our thing. Big auditorium. And so I worked on this thing for several weeks, which I called Comunicación en la Nueva Época. And the theme that I built it around was it was going to be like the question that gringos have when trying to learn to speak Spanish. And the block that happens to people who are trying to translate into another language. Because what they're doing when they do that is they think what they're saying in English, and then they try to translate it into the language that they're going to present, instead of thinking in the language that they're going to present in the first place. And this is a spiritual enlightenment realization that we're still thinking like a gringo and then just trying to translate it into this other language that they can get the words. Whereas the real presentation for your own communication, maybe you can't do it in Spanish. But the point is to be able to do this in all the other ways that we're trying to communicate with other people. And so it's a metaphor for how we're still here, but trying to make ourselves clear to someone there, but not really bridging the gap personally, spiritually, between the two. And so I wrote this thing over a couple of weeks, few weeks, up in La Azotera, and had a tape recorder. And actually, what I was doing was recording it. Actually, what I chose to do was record it and then write it down, listening to my recording, changing it, and so on, until I had this finished work. And so then Carlos and I spent a few days translating it together into Spanish. He was crazy about it. Now, the reason this is on my mind is that Carlos, this morning, he and I had been talking about, because this thing ended up getting printed in the publication of the UNAM, or University of Mexico's uh, sociological journal, called Codice, Codice. And I never really got a copy of it. And I think somewhere maybe I've got my hard work of, of it, but I never really got a copy of that. And he and I have talked about it now and then. And he was going to be in Toluca. He was going to see Ennio. And so I said, listen, can you see if Ennio could get a copy of Codice? And I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it, It was going to be in Spanish, of course. So that was a part of the news that Carlos had for me. So this morning, and he's telling me, he was, it wasn't good news, because poor Ennio, who he said he's younger than you, Shiva. Well, he calls me Shiva still, but and so he said, if Ennio it's like just like Chris Kelsey calling me Guru, and so he goes, and I talked to Ennio. I said, but I got to tell you, he's not all there. I'm sorry, he's kind of lost and and so on and so we talked about that for a while and then um, that was over. That part of it was over, and we were talking more about him approaching the border with a busload of Mexicans, all family of his, and me, my heart thumping about what I've been watching in the last number of months. And so, anyway, I made the presentation. Uh, this audience, I always had good rapport with them when Carlos and when I'd be at his classes or or in Cozumel too, down there, and I it was just a tremendous thing, and the whole audience was just asking me questions until until the big guy, the major figure that was supposed to follow me, because we're going way over my time limit. Carlos will tell you all about this when you see him. And so the this guy standing, it's like how the auditorium, there'll be walkways on the sides of it, and so there's this guy, there's this, I don't know, some kind of governor or something like that, is like standing there watching this adoring crowd keep asking me all this stuff, and then Carlos and Carlos would translate for me, and then I would respond to him, and they were just totally in love with the spirituality of it, with the harmony of it, with the basically I would say would be an evolutionary process, really, if I was talking about it in now's terminology that we're using. Uh, and that uh, finally, we just had to go. We just had to go, and Carlos and Ennio and what's his other good friend, they were just so full of they enjoyed all of it. Watching this guy, watching this uh, important figure just fuming as he finally got to talk himself, and this gringo of all people, uh, you know, giving up the podium to him and leaving. So I've always thought of that project not in that way, but in the topic of it, and wish that I had a copy of it. Wish that I could see what I had to say about it at the time. Uh, wish that wish that I because it's so resonant in my own imagination for what we're doing and how the ability to bridge the gap and to love all, regardless of the oppositional factors that are at large in our actual world or outside, um, and how the enmity complex is there. It seems almost like a cliche for us now to come back to it and come back to it and come back to it. Um, and how easy it is to just allow things to happen terribly to people or even do them when our own evolution is at stake. The cultural evolution, of course, is really where all our comforts and discomforts lie. But it's really our own evolution ultimately that is what matters. It's a shame he isn't here to join us immediately, but he will be. he's been getting emails and stuff, and uh, he's been following what we're doing, just like others have. And so I don't know if we'll see him in 2 weeks yet, but we're going to see most of our troop in 2 weeks, and so that's going to be um, a crowded screen that I'll be looking at with delight. So I assume that you all got my email from yesterday, and I felt it as like I mentioned to Mitch a little while ago, as kind of like the spark of today's discussion and what we would take into a meeting in 2 weeks when we once again postpone Emerson again and look at this as current events. But current events, not just politically, Jamie would have been happy to hear, but um, more holistically than that. And the heartbreak that we're experiencing, whether it's um, for others or for ourselves, is really the big lesson here. And as I said before, as I said in that email of yesterday, um, I looked it up online. Is evolution still underway? But what I found was like not at all relevant to what it really is about. And so that took me all the way back to Darwin's lost theory of love.
Mhm.
And so then I'm thinking about that and thinking about how poor Darwin, I mean, I've thought about him, as some of you know, as a tragic hero. A heartbreaking story, really, when we read it and think about it and so on. And he became famous for all the wrong reasons. Not that humankind wasn't once a savage creature, hardly blamable, really, when you figure it's a two-legged animal who doesn't really quite know what to do with anything except maybe it can fight some other two-legged animal and in order to get a meal or actually eat the person, if you could call them persons yet. And so then it gets supplanted in Darwin's imagination by the moral sense. And that's why I wrote that. I don't think Tim Burgess hasn't seen it, but I sent that thing I wrote out about 6 months ago or however when that was, calling it Darwin's lost theory of the enmity complex.
Because
And
he never
how,
mentioned it.
huh?
Because he never mentioned it in
No,
that
because he
book.
didn't know about it. He didn't have Arthur Keith yet to tell him about it. Because then he would have been able to see, hey, yeah, this is just two facets of humankind, early humankind, and right now as well. After all these eons of evolution, here we got humankind still stuck right in it. And how Darwin himself, as the tragic hero that I perceive him, Lloyd didn't quite come out with that term, those kinds of terms. I'm sorry that he didn't. Where poor the descent of man was a failure. And when he was trying to write about it, he was being edited by his daughter and wife to clean it up a little bit or to calm it down a little bit or whatever. And that poor guy is thinking, I know there's something better here. I know there's something better. I know that And here you got, like, let's say Richard Dawkins or someone like him who considers himself Darwinian now, but would be scornful of that idea of the moral sense. And how something like, and Mitch and I were talking about this back about 20 minutes to four, talking about the moral sense as being probably the most important factor in evolution there is. Now we can look at it in practical terms and talk about all the learnings that we've read about and or watched in the Nova episodes and so on about the mind and discovering how to do this and discovering how to even the beads that develop the mind. This gal, is so wonderful she is. And so how these beads would be factors that would be in the evolutionary growth of the members of the tribe and so on. But it's really the moral nature, and we do get to see it. We get to see it in the Amazon uh, episode. We get to see it in the um, even in um, the secrets of the forest, because we see how uh, the moral nature is what they're trying to drum into our consciousness so that we can understand carbon and understand how to be in harmony with carbon, which is along with which get better, carbon's getting better help from the fungi. And so we go, yeah, I mean, there's this wonderful teamwork going on among these this because it's like it's not just the secret life, it's not just the secrets of the forest, it's just the secret life of plants. And it's got more, you might say, concern for the health of the environment than the human beings that are dealing with the environment. So that just about rounds up my introductory words here. Um, that our inner harmony is what it's all about. And Mitch was saying when we were talking, back around 335 or so, that we've got this personal evolution we're dealing with, this individual evolution we're dealing with, as well as the cultural one, social one, all these levels of it as well. And they really matter, and they really are what we're talking about when we're talking about the 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 movements that arise and the historical movements that arise. I mean, we could do a book as a group or whatever. We could do a book just on these evolutionary moments when a large part of the population is buying in to a level of consciousness that is in resonance with moral development. Mitch was talking about in terms of economics. I was an economics major as an undergraduate, and yeah, I mean this is Adam Smith and so on. I mean, all kinds of topics that come along that require that. In fact, even when one of the aspects of evolution or excuse me of economics was land. We don't think of that anymore. We don't think of that as one of the terms of economics, but it was a term then, and it could have been selfishly used as just where you need land to put your where to put your factory there, but also there needs to be some kind of relationship with the land, and there needs to be some kind of harmony with it. And that's, of course, what Emerson is waiting to remind us of, and we've all been reading Emerson anyway, so we're all in tune with the tremendous depths of him poetically and as well as philosophically, which are not very far apart anyway. So now we're dealing with the now time though, and if we, I mean, we've been watching reason to be discussing that topic as we move along, the blockages of evolution, the interruptions of evolution, but nothing like now. And so, in a way, we're more than just a study group. I mean, I don't know what those implications are. We got Tim Finnegan probably way out in front of the rest of us because he's actually teaching engineering with heart and producing students that are actually looking at it that way. I've got an old student of mine um, from the 70s. Name is John Milbauer, and I'm reaching out. You know, I want to share that with you guys to different people here and there, like Tim Burgess here, for example. He's my most recent reach out. Um, and I mean, he's like the wet dream of all reach outs. And so, because he and I are talking every week, you know, for an hour, Tuesday or Wednesday. And this guy's got a life of his own. He's got an art forms of his own. He's got talents of his own and a history of his own. But he's also hungry for what we are doing and to be a student of this, and which more or less I'm telling him about how to be a student to all kinds of other things that I was a student to. But um, you got Frank. I mean, he's out over there. You know, he's a defense attorney and having to face it in that regard, and others among us, but a lot of retired among us as well. So we're philosophically oriented in this regard, which I think is great anyway. And but at the same time, is there any activism in there? I'm not really pushing it, but there's a lot of imaginations in our group. Frank and I are joking about this all the time. Of course, one time we got joking about something else and it really torpedoed a couple of our possible members when we began looking at ourselves as something of a little cult. When it wasn't just me talking to him or him, somebody else or here, and suddenly there was this group that was forming. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. And so then Frank and I are just laughing. So Frank is telling me, you got a cult going, man. And so I told Jeff Yamauchi, and that was it. He figured, oh, you're trying to have a cult, man. You're trying to have a cult. And no, it was a joke. It was a joke, man. It is a cult. It is a cult in a way, of course. But there's nothing you might say evil about it. It's just a small outfit, a small group that are agreeing on some certain things and studying them together, and that's what it is. So, what do you guys think?
Well, you're talking about current events, and man, I recorded this bishop of some church on the news last night. He was asked, well, what would a moral president be like?
Moral president?
Yeah, they're
Oh.
talking about Trump.
Mhm.
And so he asked the news guy asked the bishop, can you tell us what a moral president would be like? And he gave a 5-minute speech, which I recorded, and you could
Ah,
hear it if you wanted to. But he gets into empathy. Um, and that's when I really my ears kind of perked up because he was talking about the necessity for empathy if you're going to be the president of a big democracy. Yeah. Um, I don't know if you guys know him. I can't remember his name. Let me see what we got here. Let's see.
Valley the River of the Sink Theology.
Bishop Farber. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
well, copy that to us.
Okay.
So what did he say beyond that?
Well, that's why I recorded it to play for you because I can't repeat it, very well at all. And in the very beginning of it, I wasn't listening so closely, but I realized that's where he was going, was the morality that Darwin is trying to point out in his second book. The sense of, was it the sense of morals? I forgot what the term is we're using. Um,
The moral sense, he called it, right?
yeah, moral sense, right. And so I just thought it was really great to hear this guy on national news, you know, saying these things that he could be sitting in here with our group. So yeah, I'll see if I can send that to you guys. Maybe after this little discussion.
Tim,
There's a
you waving your hand, Tim?
oh, I am. I was going to add something to what Frank was saying about the question that the reporter asked, or whatever the exchange was there about the president's morality. What would a moral president behave like? But I saw another clip in the news that asked directly to your president, um, do you have any limits on your power? You probably saw that one. It's like, oh, well, no, except the only limit is my morality. So unfortunately, he's seeing it in a different way. Well, that you can do whatever you want,
Yeah.
as long as you can live with it, basically. That's,
Well,
which maybe is true for all of us. We do whatever we want up to the point that we're comfortable living with ourselves,
Hmm.
in a sense.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because it all has to do with your upbringing, and where you came from and how you learned all that. And poor Mr. Trump, I don't think he had any love in his younger life.
Well, Mary Trump, his niece,
Mm,
has told the whole story. Yeah. And so you can have compassion for him, but
hardly, but just a little
it's
bit.
pretty hard to do. Yeah, it's pretty hard to do at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's all about power. If you get the power, then you're justified. But it's really terrifying now. I mean, my goodness. I mean, what direction it's going is there doesn't seem to be any limit to uh, and of course it's almost all negative. What's to me what the irony is, the funniest irony right now is that he wants to stop the Iranians from persecuting their um, what's the word? Not rioters, but
Protest.
Protesters.
protesters exactly. and yet he's all about just just
Cutting it off at
terrible
home.
th doing terrible things to the other protesters, so that he just totally lacks this quality, this quality to be a president that can a president with heart. Because it's the same deal. I mean, the engineer that Frank and I, that Tim and I talked about, the engineering thing that Tim and I talked about quite a few years ago now, and that one on many days we talked about engineering and nature. And then this one day I'm just sitting there on the porch talking to him, and we would talk for 2 hours on this topic, and then um, from all the way from Australia, and and I would say what we need is engineering with heart. It was kind of a corny thing to say the way I looked at it, but he goes, "Oh boy, there you go. That's the deal," and that's what he tells Tasmania University when they offer him the job, out of the blue. I'll take your job if you can allow me to practice engineering with heart. And they
They love
salivated.
it. They love it.
I mean, what a thing, what a thing.
You think that would work in an American university?
Well, yeah, good question.
No,
That's
it's not that easy in practice, but
sure.
it's a moral thing, and you got to fit it into the constraints of economics and educational systems and rules and regulations and
Mm.
different interests. Um, Engineering is a regulated, constrained, institutionalized sort of profession, so you got to try to fit it in with that and make compromises as well. All right, things still need to get built. Right. So that's what I found, but it was a great inspiration and those discussions, I remember them well, Phil. We still talk about it from time to time, but there was a few, like you're saying, a few lengthy, lengthy discussions we had that it's absolutely true, prompted me to sort of take a position, take a, I guess, a moral and a professional uh position to hold to, and then move a strategy forward on the basis of doing that. Uh, and yeah, it's had its detractors along the way, and it's only coming through. It takes so long to put something like that into actual practice. There's a lot of people involved, and you got to go through a lot of checkpoints and a lot of discussion and consultation and preparation. But it's only just sort of coming through now. We don't call it engineering with heart. Obviously, it would be hard to market it exactly like that because we still have to, the bottom line is we have to get students to come in and take this course, right? But yeah, it's still moving through. That's one thing I think. The whole the whole topics that have been discussed in this study group, they are around the human evolution. So I have to concede that I've always been uh, not a student of, but a observer of traditional evolution of the first Darwin type, the origin of species. So this look into the descent or the descent of man, and then Loy's treatment of it was a new perspective for me, I have to say. Um, and but I've probably mentioned this before that I can't help but always go back to the science at some level because you can't deny the origin or the uh, natural selection process in nature. It's just there. It's happening. It always has. But the moral side, it comes through in Loy's book, doesn't it? Where it talks about um, not just in humans, but in the whole animal kingdom. The if we call love or morality or affection and whatever, I can't remember all the terms that sort of were used variously in that book, but were they in themselves, in some ways, defense mechanisms? Like if you, there were examples, weren't there, in the book, but if you are um, a group of mice somewhere in some jungle or something, uh, would there have been in that billions of years of evolution an underlying process going on where mice that stuck together a bit more survived a little tiny bit better than the ones that ran around a bit more independently. So then to me, that's what natural selection's about, is tiny little adjustments going on over a huge expansive length of time. So, like, in the bird kingdom, everything, the one that grew a yellow feather just by a mutation over time, slowly those traits were passed on because it had formed it as a defense mechanism or something. But so is that how we get to morality? Because uh, an inner sense of some moral compass uh, allows our species to survive better. But is there sense in that? I think that's partly what was coming through in that, and it comes through in when you're reading your email from yesterday, Phil, that it's sort of when you went online and looked at is the evolution still happening, and you found all these references to, of course it's happening because look, things are adapting to climate change and all that. That's the physical side. But I never thought about the moral or the emotional side too much. But when I when I did, I started thinking, can't throw away the physical adaptation side.
Hmm.
There's probably there's a reason why this moral sense happened because it's part of the natural selection process for a species. That's what I sort of got to, but
Hmm.
if that's, but I'll leave it there.
Let's take the word adaptation for a moment.
Yeah.
And
Instead of natural selection, adaptation.
well, let's take it out of evolutionary language for a moment.
Knowing you, there's like is there a root? What's the root of that word? Is there um is there a Latin root to that?
Yeah, it's a good idea. That's a
Okay.
good
Okay.
thought. Um, of course, it's a central to evolution. Um, it's one of the basic terms of evolution. Um, since evolution, evolving, is about adapting and then mutating. So, in the most literal forms of evolutionary history, which I've just learned in the last couple of years, um, and so um, adaptation leads to mutation, which then creates a new species or a new version of that species, or what have you. But I like the term better for the moment to be looked at with human nature and the apart from what we think of as quote evolution in unquote or adaptation or whatever unquote, and just look at adaptation and let's say we don't want to ever, what we're doing, we don't want to ever lose sight of the principle that we're working with, which is under the rubric of being in love with wisdom. That's why we call it philosophical evolution. So it's a mantra I've adopted over the last 6, 7 years is allow me to be under the influence of wisdom. It's a wonderful thing cons- to use as a mantra. Allow me to be under the influence of wisdom. Allow me to be under the influence of wisdom. Allow me to be under the influence of wisdom. Situations occur all the time where we're being put to that test. It's always there. I say there's a car accident, two guys hit each other, they both jump out of the car. Wisdom is there. But who tunes into it? Who refers to it? Who wishes to be under the influence of wisdom? And we recognize that there's a lot of humility to this because we're not considering ourselves to be wise, just under the influence of wisdom. And it's easy to think about because it's the highest point on the chakra system. Because we also want to be under the influence of insight. We want to be under the influence of creativity and so on. But wisdom is really what we would like to be in. And not only that, we use the term all the time because we do something and then we react. And then a little later on, we go, was that the wisest thing to do? Was that the wisest thing I could have done? We do that all the time. I'm sure everyone here has done that many times. Was that the wisest thing to do? Say, was that the one? Believe me, I got a whole history of where the answer is no. And believe me, my whole life would be different if I had been. I mean, really, 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 really different. And so all I can look at is it was an losing. I was a winning, a learning is the term I was looking for, a learning opportunity. It was a learning experience, and so it brought me closer to wisdom by doing so. I think that but if we come back to adapting, we really want to be conscious of what we mean by it and think of it as an evolutionary term right there. Adaptation and mutation are right. Any study in evolution, that kind of Darwinian evolution, will tell you right away. It's adaptation. That's everything. Everything in evolution depends on adaptation. And then mutation will follow that. But we're talking about the other species like you're talking about, more or less. But just think of the everyday situations that we are involved with that we could have adapted to the condition that we were suddenly faced with. And we refused to do it or couldn't do it. When you were talking about mice before, it reminded me of a great teacher in Mitch and both in the history of both Mitch and me, named Swami Shivananda. I always get a little choked up thinking about this guy, Mitch. And he was the guru of my guru and Mitch's sister's guru and so on. Swami Vishnu Devananda. Swami Vishnu was a kind of, you might say, juvenile delinquent when Shivananda got a hold of him. A brilliant, skinny yogi. Complete illustrated book of yoga. We all have that. We and I both have that book. Amazing hatha yogi. I've still got it out there. Can't see it out there, but it's there. And now he's well, last we knew, he's just a fat pig of a human being, a grotesque, really, human being. When I was in his ashram, and when his sister was in his ashram, And so, but at the same time, um, he would tell the story about Swami Shivananda. Although I don't think I heard it from him actually, Mitch. I think I got it from Swami Satchidananda, who was another disciple of Swami Shivananda. And he was a great guru, Swami Satchidananda. And he was Vishnu's Guru Bhai, his brother, guru, fellow disciples. And he would tell about how in Rishikesh, on the Ganges, in the ashram, in the great Shivananda ashram, when Swami Vishnu would, when Swami Shivananda would see, which means the bliss of Shiva, by the way, and so, and he would see these little mice scurrying around, and he would tell his disciples, ah, these people seem to be hungry. So the, this is where spirituality really rings resonant with evolution. So that Shivananda was evolved sufficiently to be able to look at those little creatures and see them on the same path, on the same evolutionary path, like you're describing, in this beautiful way. It's it's I think over the years I've thought that really is kind of a stepping stone to becoming a better human being, just to be able to do that. And that's evolution. I mean, it just seems to be that's freaking evolution, it's just to become better. And that's to me, when we look at evolution, right down to the nitty gritty of it, of what we're talking about, uh, with creatures which is the most you get now when you look up, is evolution still underway? And you say, yeah, you got this species and that species and so on, and they're doing this, but it's all about getting better. And but we think we're human beings and we're already we don't need to get better. We're already better. Because a lot of people think that better is there, right? Like somebody would say to me, "Oh, well, are you better? Are you better? In other words, am I totally healthy, 100%? That would be better." I say, "Yeah, I'm better, but I still got a way to go here in terms of this or that. Like I still, right now, I'm really better. Like last night, I only woke up once to go to the bathroom since my surgery. And it was about 2 or 3. I went to bed at 11, and then when I went back to bed, and I didn't wake up until 7 o'clock, and or 6 o'clock, and I got up, and it was, oh wow, I only got up once. But even so, when I'm urinating, there are little drops of blood that go down there. So so I'm better, but I'm not best yet. You'd say whatever you were gonna call it. But it's like better. We can always get better. We can always get better. But do we want to, and 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 what does it mean to us and so on? And there's so many things that have nothing to do with evolution that we're on that path. I mean, obviously when we get into spirituality, we'll be looking at it, and there are lots of ways of looking at spirituality without thinking of it in terms of evolution or just regular health, just health and fitness and so on. Yeah, I'm better. I'm better. But well, you know, what does that mean? How much have you changed? How much have you grown? How much have you, all of these other factors that go, and that's to me, I was just sending a letter to one of the guys I've got on my list, you've probably seen his name on these mailing lists when you go out, when I said, named Joe Kolodner. On the list of on the email address, and I got all your guys, and then I got Joe and Zelda Kolodner over there. So who the hell is that? Well, we're in the army together in 1960. and he was already on his way to Israel. And but we had the most amazing 6 months in Fort Dix, New Jersey. We were National Guard guys, and he was kosher. He just finished a PhD at Columbia in psychology. He was going to go over to Israel and become a psychologist. But boy, was he, you might say, anti-army in so many ways. And we together we just pulled off all kinds of amazing tricks on the army. They were all illegal. They were all, you might say, virtuous. And we got out of touch with each other here and there a few times. On my honeymoon with my first wife in New York City on the way to, before we went to the Peace Corps in Ethiopia in another week. And there we are. We were in New York, jumping around at all my old stomping grounds in New York before we went to Ethiopia, jazz clubs and other places in New York. And there we are, Times Square one afternoon, and there was Joe on the street corner. Hadn't seen him for 3 years. That was 63. And that was fall of 63. And we were in Fort Dix in 1960 when I was 23. And boy, what a sort of thing. But I was wanted to say, well, let's spend some time together today. But I could see Paulette, my first wife, she wasn't up for it. So we just said goodbye. But then we finally got back in touch with each other years later, and now we are in touch with each other. And he told me in a letter that he's not very forthcoming about these things, and he's raised young guys, young sons, and so on that have been in the what is it, the IDF, right? Israeli Defense Force, including himself, who had to go to Beirut and be in that battle back in the whenever a couple of decades ago. Now he's just about my age, just about almost 90. And he said to me in a letter he wrote the other day, email he sent 2 months ago, Israel isn't the country I moved to. And I've been kind of playing with him in these emails, trying to get him to come forward about that kind of thing. Because here I am complaining all the time about what I'm dealing with over here as a citizen of Donald Trump. And so, and he's back, but he did that. So I've been so I sent him a long email recently and I laid out the whole evolutionary thing with him. I don't think he's going to buy it. But I'm putting him on that list, you'll notice. And Joe Kolodner, she's Zelda. And so, and hoping that he'll, oh, God, I'd love to have a guy from Israel on this group. And hoping that he'll see I told him we had a Jew, Ron Sauls. I didn't know if that'd make any difference to him. Do you know he's one of the top cartographers in the United States? You probably don't know that. He's when I first knew him, he was married to or Frank knows that. He was first married to Annie Marshall, who ran in my of course Tim Finnegan knows it too. And so but even better because Tim actually ran with Annie and she married him. That didn't work out, but now he's got another wife, a wonderful wife, and and he's in Frederick, Maryland, and we see him all the time. And now he's just into music, right? You can see all the musical instruments all around him and so on. But he was working for the federal government. He was working for Fish and Wildlife, as Annie Marshall was in Hawaii. She was studying bird migrations and stuff. But now Ron is. So I thought maybe you'd be interested to know that, that Ron Sauls is a Jew. And I'd love to have an Israeli, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, just in your email, looking at it again, Phil, you mentioned near the bottom reference to the Bible. So, and I know when you from from speaking, or no, it's not near the bottom. It's third paragraph, I think, the Bible. And yeah, I know from you that spirituality isn't confined to a single religious sector. Yeah, it's they're all spokes on the wheel, and I love that sort of metaphor and the way of looking at that. Um, Nevertheless, the Bible is a Christian perspective, is not?
Say, hold on there.
And
I don't
it's
I don't know much
the
about
New
this stuff.
Testament. The
Okay,
New Testament,
but
the Old Testament's got nothing to do with Christianity at all.
okay. So
It's history.
when we bring that into this discussion around evolution, and you were
Good.
talking about having Jewish people in the group, and there's a lot of melding together of things to probably to grapple with a bit. Or is it not? Is it all just symbiotic and you can just put uh you can just put traditional or first can't remember first stage and second stage Darwin based evolution right next to the Bible and it can work.
Sure, you can. Sure, it'll
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And
And
um, it'll work on all kinds of levels. I mean, to me, the Bible's history. Now we've got a lot of mythology, you could say, in the early parts of the Bible. But let's face it, if you're an early level of human and you're looking at at the origins of your own human race, you're going to create probably some fiction about it, because it's prehistory to you. But to me, among many things in the Bible, because as some of you know, I mean, I taught lots of chapters in the Bible and the different literature classes at UH. And to me, the most perfect example of evolution in the Bible is to look at Moses, Sermon on the Mount, Jesus, his Sermon on the Mount. One of them is the Ten Commandments. The other one is the Beatitudes. I mean, just read those.
hmm,
I mean, the Ten Commandments is so primitive. I mean, it's about, well, you don't want to kill other people, and you don't want to take their wives away from them, and you don't want to do all these other kinds of things, you know. It's so basic. And then humankind evolved all the way to just 2,000 years ago. So where you got now he's telling, blessed are they who do this, and blessed are they who do that. Plus, we got to keep in mind that Jesus wasn't trying to create these weren't potential Christians that Jesus was talking to. These were Jews. He was trying to make them better Jews.
mhm.
And so, uh, and so then you got, because, you know, I taught the Gospels many times as literature. And so you look at inner conflict. Who's got the inner conflict, you know? Well, that's those apostles, man, because they got doubts. And so Jesus is telling them, you know, that they're going to be able to do this and they're going to be able to do that and so on. And he's saying, I'm the way. So then people read that, stupid ministers read that, and they go, this means it's only through Jesus, only through Jesus. Instead of thinking about, well, this is a globe, it's a big globe. And there were traditions everywhere, all around the world. There were spokes on the wheel. You know, so all over the world, there were all of them, you know, and my mysticism and literature class, you know, I would teach every spring and I'd have 9 or 10 autobiographies of different individuals, all tremendous different ones every year, all over the world. And my students would be reading these autobiographies. It was an elective because they wouldn't let me teach it in English major course. And so they they would read all, and they would say, these guys are doing the same thing. They're talking about the same thing all over. And by the end of that semester, boy, they all got the spokes on the wheel and understood what that was all about. And for Jesus, he wasn't saying, I'm the only teacher in the whole world. He was telling them right here where we are, it's either me or the Pharisees. If you follow the Pharisees, you're going to hate publicans, and you'll have contempt for them, and you'll have contempt for these other people. You'll have contempt for all these other people, and so on, because our way is the only way, us Pharisees and Sadducees. And that's what Jesus is threatening them with, because he's threatening to broaden their spirituality and to be able to love everyone and to be able to be, all kinds of parables he would tell them about examples of that kind of love. It was like the Pharisees are kind of like Donald Trump or something. And so the Bible is, for me, a great book. I mean, you all know I love St. Paul and so on. I mean, I think that he became a Christian, and he was teaching through that and so on, and I got no problem. I mean, I don't know about the word, you know, um, um, Christ. I mean, for me, that word isn't that comfortable for me, and I don't really the Christ and so on, and being a Christian and so on. I don't know about that, but what I do know is I love Jesus. I love this guy to death, and when I'm reading the Gospels, boy, he's he's just as good as all kinds of other guys all over the world that were teaching in Lao Tzu or you know
Yeah,
hmm? Sure. So
so
it's like that kind and that kind of broader opening that we have, to to the universal truth that was always coming. That, to me, that's evolution too. So it's like the spiritual focus that is in the environment, in the reality, in nature, in all through us, that's there. And all over the world, people were tuning into it historically, um, in these the truths of it. So that, but then we're the only ones that got the truth over here and over here and over here and so on, and it's not even logical. One of the things I was thinking about earlier today about practices that we can have in this democratic way are just exactly what I know how you feel about it, and that's being mentally, right? Being rational. Tell these guys what rational means. I'm looking at
Who,
you.
me?
I'm looking at you, Tim. Tim one, Tim one.
Ratio. Which Tim? Tim F. All right. All right. Rational. Well, it comes from ratio.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you
That's
and
based on
I was
ratio.
telling I was telling Tim 3 about it just last week.
Hmm.
And so and I was saying how we look at rational literally with the root of the word, and he goes, ratio, just like that.
Yeah.
does that mean a comparison? A ratio is a comparison, right?
It's a relationship that is in what's the phrase I like to use? Maybe you can remember. You can give me it right now because you just got it. In in ratio. In ratio is rational, literally. I mean, that's just we just recognize that that's it. You know, of course, that's what it means. It means to be in ratio. It means to be able to see the validity on both sides of the ratio, rather than this is all, this is nothing, and so on.
Proportional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where's the other side? Where's the other part of it? You know, it's like where's the truth there? I need to get the truth there. If I walk into a congressional delegation or something like that, and somebody's talking about this and this and this and this, I'm going to, yeah, but what about this other side of it? What about the other side of it? And so that's it. That's wrong. That's not us. That's not, we don't believe in that.
They close their ears, yeah.
And then we're willing to just go winner takes all. We have an election and we barely squeak it out, and then it's all this.
Yeah.
You go, that's not fair. So ratio to me, rational to me means fair. Literally. You're being rational, you're being fair. We think of it as like you're being mental or you're being logical. And of course, there may be truth to that too. But it's that we think that rational is not emotional because emotional is irrational. That's not true. You can be rationally emotional. It means your emotions are fair-minded. Your emotions are not, of course, we have this crazy vision of emotions, which means they're uncontrollable and they're just out of, just we got no influence on them at all. And then what's his name, Mitch? Richard Goldman, who the New York Times journalist who wrote the book called Emotional Intelligence. And I've got a book back in there with by him. Emotional Intelligence is one book, but then he's got this other book that he did with the Dalai Lama and about 7 or 8 other guys. If I could go back and pull it out, but um, it's um, it's called Unhealthy Emotions or something like that. And it's set
So
in
who,
in Dharamsala. It takes place in Dharamsala. All these guys went to Dharamsala to be with the Dalai Lama, including Richard Goldman, to have this week or 2 week long seminar on unhealthy emotions and the phenomenon of them in the world, and then all the different approaches to them. Because these guys weren't all religious, spiritual guys. These guys were scientists and philosophers and what have you. I'm not sure the philosophers consider themselves lovers of wisdom necessarily, but they are philosophers in their mind. And so, and it was just fascinating. It's a great book. It's just a wonderful book. Um, and I'll look at it in a minute later on and lay it out to you. But it's a tremendous study in emotion. Mitch knows about this book because he read the unfinished book that I had, and the second chapter was all about emotions, and so there's a lot of references to that study, that the seminar you could say it lasted for like I say 2 weeks or so in Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama, of course, is the Dalai Lama in India. Um, and so these terms, we use these terms in all kinds of loose ways and all kinds of irrational ways because they aren't balanced and they aren't fair. So to me, when I say you're being rational, that means you're being fair-minded. That's how I think of it. Yeah, yeah, you're being fair-minded. And of course, reasoning will take you there anyway. I mean, reasoning won't take you anywhere but fair-mindedness. You might say, uh, what's the term? There's a term. Oh, in terms of rational, there's the word rationalize. What does that mean?
Balance the ratio
Hmm?
or something. Balance to go find a
No,
balance.
no, it doesn't. No, it
Or the
doesn't.
I think it means rather than take a extreme perspective to
mm,
uh, diversify and consider other aspects of the situation or what to bring it into a ratio. So I think if we so
Okay, that answer's wrong too. So,
no, it's
this
it's to
takes me
get
back
more
to
what's the
weight.
right
this,
answer then?
this takes me back to the old days. Rationalization is to disguise what you are saying that are not rational, but you make them sound like they are.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's a rationalization.
rationalizes. Yeah,
So to you it's a pejorative term really,
Yeah.
which is rationalization is an untruth.
So you're trying to rationalize if someone's trying to rationalize something, they're they're putting a smoke screen over
something
something,
illogical.
try to
Yeah,
make it sound more rational than it is.
Yeah, more true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
some
okay.
people are really good at that.
But can't you have it a less pejorative, like you're trying to rationalize. Yeah, I'm sure I've come across it used in a constructive and positive way at times where, let's rationalize what's going on here. Right? Wouldn't it ever be used in that
No,
way?
no,
Like
no,
what?
no, no.
No?
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. See, let's make up a way of sounding like we really know what we're talking about here. That's what it would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like now this is a connotation. So I don't know whether the denotation, the original literal meaning of it, uh, at the source of it, I don't know. I mean, maybe I haven't really studied it that way. So that um, you could see that because it's got rational in it that um, and that but boy the connotation of it for sure is pejorative and I think that um, it's kind of co-opting the word kind of using the word um, for ulterior motives. You could be
Sort of
looking
defensive. It's a defensive. It's used in defense, I guess, some ways.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah.
well, yeah, I
So I'm
think
trying to
Phil's right. Some,
rationalize. Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
no, I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
gonna
like say
say,
you could say you're trying to rationalize it maybe, and maybe finding like you're trying to make yourself believe it or something like that. That could be a way of looking at it too, I think. Sure. But either way, it's not really
mm,
actual rational, actually rational. Um, and but nobody knows what the word rational means except you. I mean, it's like,
Us.
um, yeah, I mean, when they say be rational or something like that, and they probably mean under control, and uh, I mean, it's not,
Sensible.
sure, and on the whole, it's valid. Yeah, on the whole, it it does mean what rational means, but maybe not in the literal understanding of the term, and which is what's so important for us to be able to do that, especially as we think of the ratio essence, which is so lacking in so much thinking. That fair-mindedness is really, I mean, all of this ties in, as I see it, with evolution. I mean, it's like to become um, more grounded in truth and to uh, which means honesty. So that, but and this means where we're going to have to accept a lot of things for truth that we don't maybe aren't comfortable with, or enmity thing, for example, would be really at stake if we're out there actually looking for the truth and being open to the truth. I mean, my goodness, I mean, and this is where the term right now we've got, let's say, a term like uh, party line. So, and I don't mean like on the telephone, but when you um, uh, I remember recently saw Lisa Rubin. She shows up a lot on MS now, and she was talking about some event, something, and she was talking about some opinions of it or some they should. But of course, if it's just if that's just if we're just looking at it from a party line point of view, then we know right away it's going to be either this or that. If you're a Republican, you're going to look at it this way. If you're a Democrat, you're going to look at it that way. Now, I feel that most of the time the Democrats are really trying to be fair-minded. I don't think there's any argument about that in my mind. Um, this is where you've got the opposites, and oftentimes there will be the case where one side is more valid than the other, more trustworthy than the other, and so on. I don't think there's any doubt about that. When I see Democratic congressmen and so on being interviewed and so on, I don't think they're spouting lies.
The Republicans are rationalizing.
Yeah, you could call it that, sure. Uh, and and it's really where the culture really is suffering from that. It, if we took terms like conservative and Republican, I mean, excuse me, conservative and I think I talked to Tim
Liberal.
Burgess about this.
Yeah,
And
I'm
so
gonna
we get
so
conservative and liberal, and we look at these two terms, uh, which is kind of the disguise of the political, game. But conservative really is got nothing to do with conservatism. I mean, most people are aware of that. I mean, if they look at the way that the so-called conservatives think, they say, well, it's not conservative about that. There's all these fallacies in conservative that have nothing to do with it. Everyone needs to be conservative some of the time. It's good to be conservative some of the time. I mean,
yeah.
there's nothing unhealthy about being conservative some of the time. Maybe just as much as liberal, because it means careful, it means, you know, just not jumping into things, let's say, not being reckless. I mean, I think there's nothing conservative at all about what we see in the in the Republican side of things.
Guys, I'm gonna step out of the conversation. I have very distant view on the your political system, but I got something going on here I got to do, so I'm gonna have to drop off. So I'll
Well,
catch you.
I think Mitch has dropped off. So
I'm gonna-
I think I think there he's dropping in again. There he is dropping in again. Okay, good. So
I'll be. I gotta jump, so
he
I'll.
heard me easy enough to know that I know Mitch well enough to know that he's not completely zonked. So um, go for it then.
I'll talk to you on the email. Yeah.
And
Apologies, I gotta step out, but I gotta.
oh, listen, man, I know
So,
where you're dealing, and I'm looking forward to our next phone conversation.
yeah,
Um,
we'll line that up.
and give my love to Leah and Aruna and
Yeah,
Dion and
will do.
and the rest of the and
See you guys all soon.
Crocodile Dundee and so on. Okay, man.
Yeah, see you guys. Bye.
Yeah, be
All right.
well. Check
Hey,
check it
Tim.
out. Check out. So look at how much bigger you all are now. So this is becoming more friendly and informal and more like, I don't know if this will be something, but other people will listen to it. Uh, I mean, at least the rest of our group. Um, they know me well enough to know that you can say, ad lib. Um, and but where we really want to be is intellectually uh, in balance as we look at the imbalances that we're experiencing um, in the world. And of course, the amity is, you could say, the method of it in many ways to create enemies um, that aren't really um, oppositional, really, in that other sense of the word. I mean, um, they're just ways of controlling the mind of a follower or a group of them and so on. But we can see it everywhere. I mean, it's like almost a cliche. But cliches are usually true. They're just used and familiar and old. So do you guys have any more contribution you want to make here to this um, topic, which is back to the interference of evolution and how so many ways to look at it. Um, we'll be talking about it spiritually in a month or so, um, in all kinds of ways. We'll get into reincarnation. We'll get into all kinds of other factors that um, are part of the process of evolution as we look at it. If it, the first thing that I always like to touch on when we talk about reincarnation um, has to do with the the caste system. Um, I'm sure Mitch will agree with me on this. He's done a lot of study in this. He's been in India, which I haven't. All the reading I've done with Gandhi, I've never seen him condemn the caste system. Instead, what he condemned was the treatment of the untouchables, labeling them as such, and then pushing them into misery. But if we think of the caste system itself, historically, it's something that couldn't survive modern humankind, with upward mobility being the um, main purpose in a really fair-minded culture. But if you look at the caste system in another way and have a series of castes that are all respectable, they're not treating to being treated in our own society we have it. And there are two ways of being upwardly mobile. One would be by just, oh, you know what? I want to mention here because I want to introduce this and we can talk about this more in the weeks to come, are the gunas. You know what the gunas are, Mitch?
Three qualities that they assign to various things.
Qualities. You can say qualities. Yeah, exactly. And there are three of them.
Right?
And if we describe them as qualities in nature, really, and then bring them into human capacity. Guna. I used to, when I was in the yoga world, used to teach this to groups. And so you've got the lowest guna, which is a guna of in certain in animals and so on, laziness, sloth. In foods, it would be like rancidity, rottenness, and so on. That would be tamas, Tamas. And foods and lifestyle. Like say, for example, you walk through a neighborhood and you go by one piece of property and you've got auto parts in the grass and the grass is all yellow and so on. And there's all kinds of junk there and the screens are torn on the doors and all the whole thing. That's a tamasic situation. The people that are there will eat tamasic food. They will be dressed tamasically, and they will certainly have a tamasic environment that they're in. They're slovenly and so on, and this is just a fact of life. And so then you get to the next level of guna, and that's rajas, Rajas. Things that are rajasic. And food, for example, now would be red meat, spicy foods. In the Shivananda ashram, we weren't allowed to eat onions and garlic because they were considered to be rajasic. I never bought that. But when we were runaways on the way to Mexico. You'll hear more about that at some point. Um, I had to get in big arguments with parts of our group because Parvati and I and some of us else we wanted onions and garlic. We didn't consider that to be rajasic at all, especially if we're not eating a bunch of other stuff along with it. But anyway, so that's now if you're a rajasic temperament instead of lazy and slovenly and useless, then you're ambitious and you're uh, uh, um,
Mhm.
desiring improvement and so on. And there's a quality there, and you can see how families evolve through the gunas. So that you got a son in the family who says, "I don't want to be in this tamasic lifestyle." They won't know. They don't necessarily know the term, but they don't want to live in this life. I want to have some ambition. I want to improve. I want to have money. I want to be powerful or famous or whatever the word is. That's all rajasic. So then you move finally. So that Parvati and I used to teach this to groups, and Parvati would always be right there. The woman I was with in those years, Mitch knew her, and she would always just be amazed at this. And so I would show how you got the kids that grows up in that family with all the stuff in the yard and the stuff I was talking about. And so then there's one of those kids. One of those kids says, "I want more than that. I want to be successful. I want to have a better home." They're influenced by coaches and teachers and other students and the other guys and so on, all that stuff, and they become more ambitious. And so they're into Rajas now, and they make more money and they get a degree and they have a job, a business, and they have all those kinds of things, and so now they have children, and those children maybe even want more and so on. And then finally, then another generation, two generations along the line, they have another kid who says, I want to be a preacher, or I want to be a monk, or I want to be something like this. Now they've moved into something beyond that. They don't want to be that kind of ambition anymore, eat that kind of food. That's called sattvic, or sattva is the term, Sattva. And that behavior, the adjective is sattvic, Sattwic. Just like you got tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. It's a huge principle for me. I mean, when I learned it, back in the 70s, for me, it was an awakening and all kinds of things that really had to do with evolution, although I didn't have a clue in that regard. I just saw it in improving your growth and becoming. This is really this whole business of spiritual growth. We'll be talking about another Mitch and I will be, and Mitch will be leading some of the discussions, and um, and we'll be looking at spirituality and evolution. Not that much of the time spiritual groups are using the term evolution because they have associated it with science and other fields. So often we have these terms that are really synonymous with each other, but are not really understood to be because we're stuck with the semantics of it that don't really um, show how we can really be in harmony with those ideas and how we can be in agreeing with each other just by broadening the semantics of it. But those are the gunas, and they're essential in Indian spiritual philosophy
Mm.
because they're ambitions that you can have to go to Satwik too. I mean, it's like because ambition isn't necessarily a bad word. In fact, I would think you could equate it to evolution, right? Yeah, my ambition is to be a better person. My ambition is to be wiser, and all blah 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 and so on. But
Bill, I'm sorry. I just gotta run my dog out, put her on her leash. She's bothering me right here. I'll be right back.
okay,
May
if
just
we'll wait
keep
for you.
talking.
We'll
Couple minutes.
okay, man. Okay, Frank.
Maybe just 1 minute.
Okay.
Beaver Josic.
Frank and I go back to 1972. Mitch and I go back to 1979. Um, and of course, Joe Kalana goes back to 1960. Frank was my undergraduate creative writing student. He was the best writing student I had. In 72, 73, in that period. Um, so that he got to hang out with Ken Kesey when I brought Ken Kesey to Hawaii for a week and had a wild time with him in 1973. And Frank and another one or two students, my best writing students, uh, got to hang out with Kesey and do a lot of things with him. And and then he joined the Life of the Land and was working with environmental things. And then he went to the mainland and got a law degree at one of the California universities. I can't think of it. And came back but he came back as a journalist on the Big Island. Um, and then got his degree, got his law degree, and became a defense attorney, and has been doing that ever since. And now he's, I think, 76 or 7. Um, and he doesn't seem to be able to quite quit. I just told him a little bit about you, Frank.
Yeah, I got
Um,
her.
and when anybody turns their back, I always tell about him. And so, um,
My dog is gonna bark when I have to go back out and get her, but I'm back
he's
for a few minutes.
Frank's a surfer, tremendous surfer. Um, Frank and I used to have these tremendous frisbee battles.
Yeah, we invented a great game.
We, yeah, Frank invented this game in this parking lot right below the building that his mother had an apartment in. Um, and because we used to play in the fields, throwing to each other, but this was a very different thing, which I'm not going to try to explain to them. But um, yeah, we had some tremendous frisbee battles with each other, and uh, and then Frank moved to the Big Island, and Mitch visited with Frank, didn't you? Mitch, you stayed with Frank, didn't you? Didn't you go to visit
Yeah,
him?
he showed me around a bit.
Yeah.
One of the days I was there, and it was pretty amazing. Um, it was at the time the volcano first started going off,
Mhm.
after years of being dormant.
Around
And
83, is this around 83, 84?
you remember the flow eventually reached the visitor center on the south end of the island.
I think it was later than that, Frank.
Oh, well, yeah, it
I think it was
started
closer to
in,
1890 because we were
And
living in, Ann and I were living up in the Sierra Drive, and Mitch stayed with us, and then he actually messed himself up on
oh,
Sandy Beach. He blew his shoulder out on Sandy Beach.
oh, oh,
I warned him. I
took a
warned.
good roll body surfing, but I recovered after a day or so, loosening up. But I just remember being at that visitor center, and I wasn't with you at that particular time, but it was that trip that I after I think it was after you showed me around, and
Meaning
but
Frank.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the next day I went ahead and went down to the visitor center, and they had a lava flow crossing the street going into the parking lot. And
yeah,
the next day, when I went back to Oahu, we were watching the visitor center burn down because the lava flow
Yeah.
was that slow going across the parking lot. It took a day.
Oh, remember that period,
yeah,
Frank, when you could just see the lava flow just going right towards somebody's house, and then
yeah, there's
it would
stop
slow,
sign,
it
stick,
would just get there and poof.
Yeah.
Frank is still unable to retire from his law world because he's set such a spirit of help for people that
yeah, it's getting to be too much. Yes. In
yeah.
fact, this case I have a trial next month. Was supposed to be over in December. I think the prosecutor screwed with me.
Oh yeah.
We had to postpone it. Yeah, back in the day, say 10 years ago or so, the prosecutors and the defense counsel were all pretty chummy. We were friends even. Even my clients would complain I was too friendly with the prosecutors. But this is, enmity, right? And
Yeah.
now, God, the prosecutor, who's a new guy here, he's like, man, you did that wrong. You did that wrong. Instead of just, hey, let's just work on this together. We'll figure it out. It's like he's throwing up these rules at me that really stupid rules. There's so many stupid rules. It could probably, I mean, you know how many words lawyers put into, here, have an orange. And the lawyer will say, I hereby give you each and every part of this orange for forever and ever for use of whatever you want to do for it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's like, what? So, yeah, I'm over it. That's why I was a criminal defense attorney. I did some civil work in the very beginning, and it was terrible. You be with two lawyers. You can tell they're lying to each other. They're lying to you. They know they're lying to you. Everybody knows everybody's lying. It's like, why am I here? So I didn't do any more civil work. It was stupid. It's all about money. And, who can trick the other one the best or something? I don't know. But at least after my experience with civil attorneys, I realized the prosecutors are really good people for the most part.
Mhm.
I mean, they had no other agenda except to do the best to see that justice was done, supposedly. I mean, sometimes they're a little bit too energetic about it, but I got this great case right now where the prosecutor has to prove a negative. They got to prove that these dogs that attacked this man were not provoked. Now, no one saw the attack begin. No live person saw the attack begin. The man died. They did an autopsy and they sent his blood to Pennsylvania laboratory that determined his blood had 350 nanograms of methamphetamine in it. You know, when they use methamphetamine in a hospital setting, they use about, your body usually gets up to like 20 nanograms. This guy had 350 nanograms. So, you know, between 200 and 600 is where people, that's how high they go with nanograms per liter, milliliter in recreational use, you know, and where they die. So my defense is I got this expert from Pennsylvania is going to testify by Zoom that people with that much methamphetamine in their system are often irrational, violent, you know, all these other great adjectives for me. So that's my defense. This guy was irrational. He provoked the dogs. Can the prosecutor prove otherwise? I could tell the Judge, I'm just raising a doubt. And you know what? I think it's a reasonable doubt. We'll see what the judge does, you know. She doesn't like me either.
Well, I've been trying to get Frank into mediation.
Don't want to be a judge. I don't want to be a judge. I want to be a writer. I'm gonna quit the law and write about everything I learned by being a lawyer, about humanity, you know.
So, Tim,
Hmm. Yeah.
you are a great listener.
And can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I'm not lighting up like you guys light up. I'm a listener. What's the question? You want to comment?
Well, usually the best quality of listeners is that they ask questions, right?
Hmm.
And by listening, they have great questions. Um, non-listeners have a lack of intelligence to put into a question. Intelligence meaning information, like the government would use the term.
Yeah. I know.
And really, that's what intelligence means anyway. It means knowledge, and the whole. It's a beautiful word in that regard that we don't really use it for anything except what your number is. 121 or 100 or 88 or whatever, and so that's your intelligence. And you go, no, it's not your intelligence. Your intelligence is such a holistic thing. What you've learned and what you know and what you can share. And so you get to hear a lot of these guys yammer along because this is my group is pretty much a group of yammerers, um, but including me. But at some point you have to graduate into
Speak.
Asking questions.
someone with a voice, yeah, or sharing, because I know you got plenty to do that with. You're very creative. This guy's very creative, my man. This guy's an artist and owned restaurants and is a master chef and is an outdoorsman. And he's a
Mostly
really,
outdoorsmen these days. Yeah.
really,
I'm in the woods a lot. I'm in the woods a lot. So I get a lot of time there. And I don't know. I mean, we've talked a lot of things. I was catching up on the Gunas. I know you mentioned that once before, but if you'd have
oh,
asked
did
me
I?
what that was, I wouldn't
Uh-huh.
have been able to come back like Mitch did. But
Mm-hmm.
we have talked about that. Um, I'll say from this discussion today, I'm caught up in protect nature is to get people to love it, but that's not easy. I do force baiting guiding as just a side thing, and it's something I've learned a lot with. But it's amazing how in the education of that, their goal is, as if you imagine forest baiting guides, I considered it kind of like the yoga teacher of the 50s. There weren't many of them around. And when you told someone, wasn't around in the 50s, but I'm sure if you told someone you were a yoga teacher in the 50s, you got some raised eyebrows, maybe, It was rare. So not now. Everybody taking yoga class. Of course, they're doing it wrong. But I won't get into that. But in terms of this, the forest bathing thing is their goal was to get people to love, because when you love nature, you'll protect it. That's the thing. It will disturb you when you see a bulldozer in a field, in a lot, because you understand that you can't replace those microorganisms that, billions of them in your hand when you pick up from a good forest, not from playground, but from a good forest. And I love that idea, but when I think about the complexity of getting people to fall in love with the forest, it's going to be difficult. But somehow that has to happen. I mean, that's in some small way. When I take people out to forest bath, what's great about forest bathing is there's so much health benefits you can get from the forest. It lowers your cortisol levels. It improves your mood. It helps your heart rate variability, lowers your blood pressure. Just being in there. These are facts that will. So in some ways, our society loves to run to the next thing that'll help them, get them healthy or save them. That would be helpful to get people, oh, this is really great for me. How can I repay this? And in forest bathing, people think by loving nature and protecting it. I love it, but I haven't always. I love to use it. I love the mountain biking. I love to do this, but it's grown on me now as something much more spiritual. And that alludes to the show you had us watch, The Secret Life, right? That one where that guy, he stuck his foot in his mouth with the plant a trillion trees thing, just because it was a calculation that he came up with, and then someone went off and run of it. But he's like, actually, no, those forests aren't going to work that well right now. We need to just protect the ones we have. So that's basically my comment right now on all this. Yeah, with climate change, I hate talking politics. I really do. It's so tired. But I know it's where we are right now. I actually think in this whole thing that you're talking about, Phil, taking a real macro level of it, we should learn something from this administration. I don't mean what they're doing, but what they're messing up. All mistakes we learn from, hopefully. So the hope is that this country, as its own organism, can learn from this. I don't know if we're going to learn from it. And when we learn from it, I don't know. But anywho, I think that's all I have right now. That's my thought. That's where I come from. As a sculptor, I try to bring that into my pieces, this love of nature into something, though, that tells a story, not just a pretty shape or something like that. Because we now know these trees talk to each other. They're all dependent on each other. It's much more complicated than we ever thought it was. Mycelium networks, who was talking about that 25 years ago? Nobody. Or I don't think, not that I heard of it. I'm sure some people were scientists, but it's becoming more common knowledge now that, Jesus, if that's all connected, then we're all connected, and we are nature. We came from this earth. We didn't fly in here on a stork. You know what I mean? We are as much nature as the grass and the trees outside right now. It's just that we have
too much intelligence.
Well, it's perfect. It's just what yeah, it's too much. How do you say it? Tell me, majestic. Mitch said it when you were going to do your dog. You're being majestic. Yeah. Too much of that. Too much ambition, too much without balance. We're completely out of balance.
Well, the
Speaking of
thing
my
is,
dog, he's barking. I'll be right back.
Oh yeah.
we're taught the American way is to be ambitious growing up, to
Right.
be successful, to have ambition. And, you know, in a certain way, there's some truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
And to absorbing your culture and, and seeing where you can go in it and be successful in, a way that you can feel good about, that is not just putting a roof over your head and feeding the family and stuff, but just making a mark that's good for the whole society if you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get into the spiritual field, all of a sudden that's all bullshit, because the mantra is, tune in, turn on, and drop out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's, in a sense, what you have to do if you decide to devote yourself to a spiritual meditative path. All that stuff is just kind of interferes with your evolution.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that the very thing that makes you a good person in society can vastly interfere with your spiritual path if you're
Yep.
attached to that.
Yep.
Whether it's your ego, your image,
Yeah.
your possessions, it's all interference on your spiritual path. When you study these different paths that require you to kind of tune in, turn on, and drop out, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Or as Ram Dass would say, be here now. Yeah.
It's an enigma.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And
But don't you think that if these trees are all connected, we are too, though? I mean, right. But that's the thing,
Sure.
is we're not, when we go for ambition, we're going for ourselves, our family, those who are going to benefit from us when we pick ourselves up. But if we were able to maybe see this as our actions affect the other person, and then we are all connected. So if I'm going up, someone's got to be going down a little bit. You know what I mean? That's just kind of capitalism. So, and I grew up with, like, yeah, I got to take care of my own. I have to take care of this, take care of that. And then you sit back and like, maybe that wasn't the most poignant path. I didn't spend enough time thinking about how might this affect the other person or something.
Yeah.
Well, the beauty is that
We get more time.
exactly we're growing and
I
we're
like it.
evolving, and there's a truth out there, and it's beckoning, and uh, it's well, it's 6 o'clock.
9 o'clock over here. Getting close to bedtime.
Time for me to drop out.
4 o'clock over here. Actually, I got a protest to go to. It starts at 4, but I'll be late for that. It's okay.
There's time changes.
Yeah, there's all over the place now. So I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. You'll
Awesome.
be hearing from me between now and then.
Sure.
Alright.
Are we talking this week, Tim?
Yeah.
Tuesday or Wednesday?
Hey.
I'll let you know. I think.
Oh.
Adios, amigos.
I'll text you.
Okay. Are you going to be
Morning.
watching? You're going to be watching the Patriots tomorrow, I assume.
Hmm. Well,
NBC,
who?
NBC,
Yeah, I'll probably tune in a little bit. Yeah.
8
I've
o'clock
got
your
my
time.
eyes on the national championship in college, though. Miami. It's my school. So, did you
Mm.
know that?
You went to University of Miami?
I sure did.
Oh, I've never known where you went.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So these playoffs have been quite a run for me too. We're both having good football years now. So,
Well, we'll talk about that more.
yeah, for sure. All right.
Mitch is gone. So,
I'm going.
I'll see you,
Nice
Frank,
talk.
next time.
Okay. All right then.
All right, Phil. I'm taking
yeah,
off
yeah.
also.
Next week, Nick, in 2 weeks, we're gonna have a bigger crowd, so that's gonna be very interesting.
Good deal.
And love you guys, and
All right.
and
Talk to you soon.
yep, we'll talk soon. Okay,
Okay.
Frankie too.
Okay. Joe,
Okay,
yeah.
say hi to
We'll talk.
say hi to Etsuko for me,
Oh, we'll do.
and
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna go down, I think, and see how this protest is, and maybe just take some pictures. I didn't make a sign this time or anything.
boy,
It's a pop-up protest just because of the shooting these last few days.
no kidding. I got what you were talking about. I assume that's what you meant.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, my
Okay.
boy. Okay,
Yeah. We'll
okay,
talk to you, Phil.
okay.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
And
And
bye.
so long to this grand audience we got. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.